With the second round of the playoffs getting underway, we not only get to see some fresh new action between teams facing off against each other for a chance to go to the conference finals, but we also saw the seasons of 8 teams officially come to an end. For over 2/3 of the league now, the offseason has officially arrived, and their focus is transitioned towards how they can improve themselves for the future, both in the short term for next season and in the long term beyond that. One of the biggest ways the teams do so is through trades, and for today's video, Bleacher Report has once again hooked us up with a fresh batch of hypothetical deals to analyze. The purpose of these deals, according to them, is to replace the disappointing star players in certain teams' lineups, so many big names will be featured in the proposals today. As always, I'll be going through each one discussing whether or not the trade is reasonable, which of the teams it favors, and whether or not it's something that could actually happen in reality. Plus, if you want to read the actual article itself, it will be linked down in the description of the video. Before we start though, I want to thank Prizepix for sponsoring this video. Prizepix is the perfect service for all of us basketball fans here because when you're involved, it makes watching games every night so much more fun and engaging. Basically, it's an application that provides you with lines on all kinds of individual player props, such as points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers made, amongst others, and you simply have to choose whether you believe they will record over the set amount in the line or under the set amount in the line. Make your selections, wager however much you want to, and if your picks hit, you can win some big money. For some picks that I'm looking at making for today's slate of games, I'm thinking of going with James Harden to score over 23.5 points, Bam Adebayo to grab over 9.5 rebounds, and Tobias Harris to make over 1.5 threes. If this sounds at all intriguing to you, then go use the link down in the description of the video to sign up today and use promo code REFERENCE to receive a 100% deposit match bonus up to $100. Once again, thank you to Prizepix for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. The first proposal in the article is between the Miami Heat and the San Antonio Spurs, and in it the Heat receive Doug McDermott in exchange for Duncan Robinson and a first-round pick. At first glance, this seems like an insane deal, but if you take a second to think about it, it's not as crazy as it looks on paper. Duncan Robinson exploded onto the scene a few seasons ago as an absolute sharpshooter after going undrafted, and his ability to knock down threes on a high volume of attempts with great efficiency was why the Heat rewarded him with a 5-year, $90 million contract extension last summer. The issue, though, was that in order for him to continue to be worth that kind of money that they paid him, he needed to continue to produce at the absurd rate that he had been, and that level of production has proven to be unsustainable for Robinson. This season, Robinson made just 37% of his threes, which is much closer to being league average than it is to being the lights-out guy that they need him to be, and outside of his shooting, he really doesn't give them much else. He's a liability on defense, he doesn't create off the dribble, and he isn't a ball handler, and all of this has resulted in him being demoted to a bench role this season, which isn't a good look at all for a player in the first season of a massive contract extension. He still has 4 years left on this deal with the Heat, and in the last season of the deal, the Heat will be paying him $20 million, which is just way too much for a bench player. Enter Doug McDermott, who is an experienced veteran. He's a proven elite shooter, having made over 41% of his threes 4 of the last 5 seasons, including shooting 42% from deep this year. He's a much better finisher at the basket than Robinson is. He's on a better contract with just 2 years remaining, being paid $13 million each year, and while neither are great defenders, McDermott definitely has the edge there as well. Sure, attaching a first-round pick to this deal might seem like an overpay for the Heat, but in terms of swapping the players, they might be inclined to include it as a sweetener to get the Spurs to accept the trade because they wouldn't do it with Robinson's contract without it. The next proposed trade in the article is between the Charlotte Hornets and the Atlanta Hawks, and in it the Hornets receive John Collins and Kevin Huerter in exchange for Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington, and a first-round pick. John Collins isn't happy in Atlanta, Gordon Hayward isn't happy in Charlotte, and that's basically the gist of why this deal or something similar to it could actually be proposed and considered by both sides. The Hawks clearly need a more experienced contributor to help Trae Young along the way, because this year showed that their run in 2021 probably isn't repeatable with the same core. Hayward is 32 years old and has shown that he's still very much capable of being a secondary scorer that can give you 20 points efficiently, so he fits the mold of what they're looking for. In Charlotte, Miles Bridges' ascension has left PJ Washington in limbo with his role, but if the Hawks are going to ship out John Collins in this kind of a trade, then Washington would be a terrific fit at the power forward spot for the Hawks as a forward who can space the floor with his shooting and play good defense without demanding touches like Collins does, so that Trae Young can still play his game to the fullest. If it were just a swap of the players, then including Kevin Huerter would probably have made it unbalanced in favor of Charlotte, but including the first round pick in the trade actually does a good job of keeping both teams interested, with serious reason to consider making it. The next deal proposed in the article is between the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and in it the two teams swap Kemba Walker for Cedi Osman. Okay, after two relatively reasonable proposals, we were bound to get one that just won't ever happen, and this is the one. I get why the Cavaliers would be interested in Walker's services, with Colin Sexton likely finding a new home, and their backup point guard spot and relative lack of capable ball handlers being one of their biggest issues, but nothing about this would compel the Knicks. The Knicks literally just took a chance by trading for an even more promising young wing player in Cam Reddish, and he still hasn't found his footing in the Knicks rotation yet, so nothing about that situation tells me that Cedi Osman, who by the way is not as good or talented as Cam Reddish, would be able to give the Knicks anything worthwhile either from the same position. It's pretty straightforward to me that the Knicks would hang up the phone, even with Kemba Walker's value being as low as it is. And finally, we have a behemoth of a three-team proposal between the Los Angeles Lakers, Brooklyn Nets, and the New York Knicks, and the full details are on your screen, so I won't waste too much time going over every little detail, but it's a lot. This proposal is huge in every way. It features big names like Russell Westbrook, Ben Simmons, and Julius Randle, and I at least understand why it was proposed in the first place, because all three of these teams and all three of those players are in weird situations at the moment, but this trade is just not it. There is no world where Julius Randle would be a good fit on the Brooklyn Nets, because outside of one season in his career, he has always been an inefficient black hole on offense who looks to get his and does so at the detriment of his team. I just don't see him being a plus if he's in a third role on the Nets playing alongside two players in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving who also dominate the ball a ton and play with score-first mentalities. That would just be a complete recipe for disaster. The Knicks would love to move on from Randle, and obviously doing so by replacing him with Westbrook isn't great, but the additions of Talen Horton-Tucker and Kendrick Nunn would make it better somewhat, and the connection between Ben Simmons and the Lakers has been obvious from day one, as a clutch client and a protege of LeBron James. I'm sure the Lakers would love to replace Russell Westbrook with Ben Simmons too, but there's just no way in hell that I can see the Nets allowing themselves to be taken advantage of this badly to help out two other competitors along the way. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these proposals. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.